The stars are always calling. I've heard them since I was a boy staring out at the dark Montana sky, dreaming of flight. Some people said it was destiny, others called it wanderlust, but I knew it as something deeper, a pull, a quiet voice whispering, "There's more out there." Decades later, that voice hasn't quieted. It brought me to this moment, piloting the stalwart Eagle into the orbit of Zeta 73, a rogue planet on the edges of known space. The last mission briefing from High Command had been vague, just the way I liked it. Unexplained energy readings detected. Gravitational anomaly in the southern hemisphere. No signs of life, the officer had droned, his voice clinical. Then came the line that hooked me. "It's likely uninhabitable, but we need answers. Captain Rogers, you've got the green light?" Answers. That's the word that gets men like me into trouble. It was my curiosity that had landed me here, an uncharted rock spinning in the void. And, like always, it was my curiosity that would carry me deeper. The stalwart Eagle was a sturdy vessel, a relic of a bygone era of exploration. Not the sleek new ships of the Frontier Corps, but a workhorse. She had been with me on countless missions, through skirmishes, asteroid belts, and the occasional scuffle with raiders. Now, as her engines hummed softly beneath my feet, I couldn't help but feel a pang of gratitude. The planet below loomed larger in the viewport, a swirling mass of whites and blues, almost like a frozen marble. My instruments painted a grim picture, atmospheric temperatures averaging -200 degrees Fahrenheit, wind speeds capable of shredding weaker hulls, and no breathable air. Yet, the energy readings persisted, a steady, rhythmic pulse from somewhere deep beneath the ice. "This is Captain Rogers, logging preliminary survey," I spoke into my recorder. "Zeta 73 appears hostile to life on all accounts." Yet, the energy signatures suggest advanced technology, or something worse. Preparing for atmospheric descent. My voice was steady, but my mind raced. What kind of force could generate such readings on a planet like this? An ancient civilization, buried beneath the ice? Or perhaps some natural phenomenon we'd yet to encounter? Either way, I had to find out. The Eagle's descent was rougher than expected. Zeta 73's atmosphere was thin but turbulent, the winds howling like banshees as they buffeted the ship. Warning lights flickered across the console, but the old bird held steady. I found a relatively flat plateau near the source of the anomaly, surrounded by jagged spires of ice that gleamed like shards of broken glass. I secured my suit and stepped into the airlock, the familiar hiss of pressurization calming my nerves. Outside, the world was eerily silent, the wind muffled by the thickness of the ice-laden air. My boots crunched against the frozen ground as I took my first steps, the bitter cold biting even through my insulated suit. "This is Captain Rogers," I murmured into my recorder. "I've made landfall on Zeta 73. The terrain is haunting. No sign of life, just endless ice. The energy readings are strongest south of my position, near what appears to be a series of canyons. Proceeding on foot, the walk was grueling. Every step sank me knee-deep into snow or sent me sliding across hidden patches of ice. The wind was relentless, a constant, icy whip against my visor. But it wasn't just the elements that unnerved me. There was something else, something I couldn't put into words. The silence. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet you'd find in a calm forest or a still night. No, this was oppressive, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. And then came the whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind playing tricks on me. Faint murmurs, just barely audible over the howl of the storm. But as I descended into the canyon, the whispers grew louder. "Rogers." I froze. The sound wasn't coming through my comms, it was inside my helmet. "Who's there?" I barked, spinning around, my hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm at my hip. But there was nothing, just the empty expanse of ice and snow. I pressed on, my heart pounding in my chest. The energy readings were spiking now, the scanner in my hand blinking rapidly. Finally, I reached the source, a massive cavern, its entrance hidden behind a jagged outcrop. Inside, the air was warmer, the ice walls glowing faintly with bioluminescent light. At the cavern center was something I'd never seen before, a monolith of black stone, its surface pulsing with an inner light that seemed almost alive. "This is it," I whispered, stepping closer. The whispers in my head grew louder, overlapping into an incomprehensible chorus. My hand reached out, almost of its own accord, until my gloved fingers brushed the monolith's surface. The world erupted in light. I was thrown backward, my visor cracking as I slammed into the cavern wall. Alarms blared in my suit, the voice of the Eagle's AI faintly echoing in my earpiece. "Warning, critical systems failure. Hull breach detected." Through the haze, I saw the monolith begin to shimmer, its edges dissolving into the air. The whispers became screams, a deafening cacophony that made me clutch my head in agony. And then, everything went black. When I woke, I was lying in the snow outside the cavern. The stalwart eagle was a smoldering wreck in the distance, its once proud hull now a jagged heap of metal and fire. My survival pack was gone, and my comms were dead. I was alone, stranded on a frozen wasteland with no way off the planet. And worse, the anomaly was growing. The firelight flickered weakly, casting long, shifting shadows against the icy walls of my temporary shelter. It had been 3 days since the monolith's eruption had ripped my life apart, 3 days since I had last heard the comforting hum of the stalwart eagle systems. In its place, there was only silence. I sat hunched over the remnants of my emergency thermal blanket, wrapping it tighter around myself. My fingers trembled, not just from the cold, but from the gravity of my situation. Zeta 73 was not a world that welcomed life. Yet, somehow, I had to survive. The first problem was food. My rations had been incinerated along with most of the eagle. All I had was a single nutrient bar I'd found half melted in the wreckage. It would last a day, maybe 2 if I stretched it. Water was easier. The planet's endless ice was an abundant supply, though melting it without advanced equipment was a slow, painstaking process. But food was the enemy that stared me in the face every hour. I had to think beyond the immediate. This wasn't a temporary stranding, the chances of rescue were slim to none. Adapt or die, I muttered, my breath fogging the air. It wasn't just a motto, it was the only truth that mattered now. I spent the first week scouring the wreckage. The eagle's once proud frame was shattered beyond repair, its hull twisted like a crushed can. Still, there were scraps to be salvaged, a cracked utility knife, a few damaged circuit boards, and, most importantly, a power cell that still held a faint charge. The power cell was a miracle. With it, I could rig a makeshift heating unit, and maybe even create a crude farm. The idea seemed absurd at first, farming on a frozen wasteland, but desperation has a way of making even the most outlandish plans seem reasonable. My background as a soldier had taught me survival basics, but this was different. Here, I had no forests to hunt, no rivers to fish. The very planet itself was my adversary. I found my refuge in a narrow ice cave about a kilometer from the crash site. It wasn't much, just a hollow carved into a glacier, but it shielded me from the worst of the wind. Using chunks of salvaged metal from the eagle, I constructed a crude door to block the entrance. Inside, I set up what little I had, the thermal blanket as a floor mat, the power cell hooked to a coil of scavenged wiring for warmth, and my precious utility knife close at hand. The bioluminescent crystals from the cavern intrigued me. They emitted a faint, steady glow, enough to light the cave without the need for my suit's dwindling power reserves. I harvested a few, embedding them into the walls of my shelter. Their light was comforting, a tiny reminder that even in this desolate place, there was still beauty. The days blurred together. I measured time by the faint movement of the stars overhead, a slow, celestial dance that reminded me of just how far I was from home. My survival routine became a rhythm. Melt ice for water. Scavenge for materials. Experiment with the bioluminescent crystals. It was the crystals that saved me. I discovered, almost by accident, that their light had a strange effect on organic material. The algae samples I'd scraped from the walls of the cavern grew faster under the crystal's glow. It wasn't much, just a slimy, green paste, but it was edible. And edible meant survival. I expanded my experiments, using scraps of metal to construct a crude planter. Mixing melted ice with crushed mineral deposits from the cave floor, I created a nutrient-rich slurry for the algae. Slowly but surely, my artificial farm began to take shape. It wasn't all progress. As the weeks turned into months, the solitude began to gnaw at me. The silence of the planet was oppressive, broken only by the howling wind and the faint hum of my power cell. And then there were the whispers. They started again one night as I lay staring at the crystalline ceiling of my cave. "Rogers." I shot upright, my heart pounding. "Who's there?" The cave answered with silence. But the voice, it was unmistakable. It wasn't a product of the wind, nor was it a malfunction in my helmet. It was something else, something alive. For days, I avoided the southern canyons, focusing instead on expanding my farm and reinforcing my shelter. Yet, the whispers continued, always faint, always just on the edge of hearing point. One morning, I awoke to find tracks in the snow outside my shelter. They weren't mine. The prints were large, clawed, and unmistakably alien. I followed them cautiously, clutching my utility knife as I crept through the ice fields. They led to the entrance of the cavern where I had first encountered the monolith. Inside, the air was warmer than I remembered. The bioluminescent crystals pulsed softly, their glow brighter than before. And then I saw it. A creature, tall, slender, and coated in shimmering, translucent fur, stood in the center of the cavern. Its elongated head turned toward me, and for a moment, we simply stared at each other. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The creature didn't respond. Instead, it raised a clawed hand, pointing toward the far end of the cavern. There, embedded in the ice, was a faintly glowing portal. The moment stretched into an eternity. The alien creature stood motionless, its glowing eyes locked onto mine, its elongated form bathed in the ethereal light of the cavern. It was the first life I'd seen on this frozen hellscape, and its presence sent 1,000 questions racing through my mind. What was it? Why was it here? And why was it pointing to the far end of the cavern? I swallowed hard, gripping my utility knife tighter. If you can understand me, I mean no harm, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The creature tilted its head slightly, a gesture that struck me as almost curious. It didn't move toward me, nor did it show any signs of aggression. Instead, it lowered its arm and began to walk slowly toward the portal. I followed at a cautious distance, my every step echoing against the cavern walls. The creature stopped a few meters from the portal, which shimmered faintly like a pool of liquid silver frozen mid-splash. Up close, the air around it felt warmer, tinged with a strange hum that I could feel more than hear. The creature turned back to me, its gaze intense. Then, it did something I hadn't expected, it knelt. The motion was deliberate, as if it were offering something. But what? I inched closer, my heart pounding, until I noticed what lay in the snow at its feet, a small, crystalline device. It was no larger than my hand, its surface etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly in the dim light. The creature gestured toward the device, then toward me, as if urging me to take it. Cautiously, I reached out and picked it up. The moment my fingers made contact, a surge of energy shot through me. Images flooded my mind, flashes of alien landscapes, swirling galaxies, and finally, the monolith I had encountered before. I staggered back, clutching my head as the vision subsided. When I opened my eyes, the creature was gone. Back in my shelter, I studied the crystalline device. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, both impossibly delicate and intricately engineered. I guessed it was some kind of data storage or communication tool, but deciphering it without proper equipment seemed impossible. Yet, as I stared at its glowing surface, something extraordinary happened. The device activated on its own, projecting a series of holographic symbols into the air. They shifted and morphed until they began to form something I could understand: words. "You are the last?" The message hung in the air, its implications chilling. "The last? The last what?" I muttered, though no answer came. The hologram shifted again, this time displaying an image of the portal. Beneath it, more words appeared. "Pathway unstable. Time fracturing. Act now." The urgency was clear, even if the details weren't. Somehow, this portal was connected to the monolith, and both were tied to the strange gravitational anomaly that had trapped me here. If I didn't act soon, the opportunity to escape, or even survive, might vanish. The next several weeks were a blur of preparation. The portal was my only hope, but stepping into it blind was a risk I couldn't afford to take. Using the power cell I had salvaged, I rigged a crude scanner to analyze the portal's energy signature. The results were troubling. The portal wasn't stable. Its energy output fluctuated wildly, indicating it could collapse at any moment. Worse, the gravitational distortions around it were strong enough to rip apart anything unprotected. But there was a glimmer of hope. The crystalline device provided detailed schematics for a protective suit, something that could shield me from the portal's instability. The materials were beyond anything I had, but with some ingenuity, I managed to cobble together a prototype using scraps from the eagle and fragments of the alien crystals. It wasn't perfect, but it was my best shot. On the day I planned to enter the portal, I returned to the cavern one last time. The whispers had grown louder over the weeks, their once faint murmurs now a deafening roar in my mind. Yet, I pushed forward, determination driving me past the fear. The portal loomed before me, its surface rippling with energy. As I adjusted my makeshift suit, the creature appeared again, silent, watchful. "Is this what you wanted?" I asked, holding up the crystalline device. The creature nodded slowly, its luminous eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Gratitude? Regret? It stepped aside, clearing the path to the portal. I took a deep breath, my hand tightening around the device. "If I don't make it, thanks for trying." The creature tilted its head again, as if acknowledging my words. And then I stepped into the light. Stepping into the portal was like being swallowed by a storm. The icy air of Zeta 73 vanished in an instant, replaced by a searing heat that made my suit's sensors scream in protest. My vision blurred as the world twisted around me, a kaleidoscope of colors and shapes that defied logic. I tried to orient myself, but gravity itself seemed to play tricks, pulling me in every direction at once. This is it, I thought, gripping the crystalline device tightly. This is how it ends, but it didn't. The chaos began to subside, and I found myself floating in a void of shimmering light. The portal wasn't just a gateway, it was a corridor, a liminal space between realities. Threads of energy wove around me like veins, pulsating with an otherworldly rhythm. I reached out to one of the strands, and the moment my gloved fingers brushed it, images exploded in my mind. The visions were overwhelming. They weren't just images, they were memories. Not mine, but those of countless beings who had traversed this space before me. I saw alien civilizations rise and fall, their cities crumbling into dust under the weight of time. I felt their hopes, their fears, their desperation. One memory stood out among the rest. It was a vision of Zeta 73, but not the frozen wasteland I had come to know. In this vision, the planet was alive, its surface covered in lush forests and shimmering oceans. Towering spires of crystal pierced the sky, and strange, winged creatures soared through the air. The monolith was there, too, standing at the heart of a sprawling city. But something had changed. A rift opened in the sky, pouring fire and destruction onto the world below. The monolith absorbed the brunt of the energy, stabilizing the rift but at a terrible cost. The planet froze, its inhabitants reduced to whispers in the wind. And now, 10,000 years later, I had awoken the monolith again. The crystalline device in my hand began to pulse, its light synchronizing with the threads around me. It was guiding me, urging me forward. The corridor stretched endlessly in every direction, but the device pointed the way. As I moved, the whispers from Zeta 73 returned, though now they were clearer, more coherent. Not destroy, repair. The words were fragmented, but their intent was clear. The monolith hadn't been a weapon, it had been a seal, a barrier keeping something at bay. My tampering had weakened it, and now, the only way to set things right was to finish the journey. Ahead, a new portal shimmered into view, larger and more stable than the one I had entered. Its surface was calm, like the eye of a storm. I stepped through without hesitation. I emerged into a world that was both familiar and alien. The air was breathable, the gravity comfortable, but the landscape, it was like nothing I'd ever seen. I stood on a plateau overlooking a vast plain of shifting colors. The ground beneath me glowed faintly, its surface composed of translucent crystal that hummed underfoot. In the distance, jagged mountains pierced a violet sky, their peaks wreathed in perpetual storms. But the most striking feature was the structure that dominated the horizon, a colossal tower of light that seemed to stretch infinitely upward. It pulsed with the same energy as the monolith, its patterns and rhythms matching those on the crystalline device. This must be it, I whispered. The source. The device in my hand pulsed again, urging me toward the tower. As I descended the plateau, a figure materialized before me, a humanoid shape composed entirely of light. It was reminiscent of the creature I had met on Zeta 73, but this being was more ethereal, its form shifting and flickering like a flame. Captain Rogers, it spoke, its voice resonating directly in my mind. You carry the key? The key? To what? I asked, gripping the device tighter. To restoring balance, the figure replied. The monolith was a seal, a safeguard against the collapse of this dimension. Your actions have disrupted its stability, but there is still time to repair the damage. I bristled at the implication. Disrupted? I didn't ask for any of this. I was stranded. I was trying to survive. The figure's light dimmed slightly, as if in acknowledgement. Your actions were not deliberate, but they have set events into motion. The tower holds the means to restore the seal. You must reach its summit, and if I don't? The figure's light flared. Then this world, and yours, will fall. The path to the tower was treacherous. The glowing plains gave way to jagged cliffs and swirling energy storms that seemed to erupt from the ground itself. I used the crystalline device as a guide, its pulses growing stronger as I neared my destination. Along the way, I encountered remnants of the beings who had built this world, holographic projections that played out snippets of their lives. They had been an advanced race, their technology far surpassing anything humanity had achieved. Yet, their downfall had been their ambition. In their quest to harness the energy of the rift, they had torn their own world apart. Their final act had been to create the monolith, a failsafe to stabilize the rift. But their sacrifice had come too late. The planet froze, and their civilization faded into whispers. Now, it was up to me to finish what they had started. When I finally reached the base of the tower, I was exhausted, my suit's power reserves nearly depleted. The structure loomed above me, its surface a constantly shifting mosaic of light and shadow. At its base was a massive gate, inscribed with the same intricate patterns as the crystalline device. As I approached, the device in my hand began to glow brightly, its patterns aligning with those on the gate. A deep rumble shook the ground as the gate slowly opened, revealing a spiraling staircase that ascended into the tower's core. I hesitated for a moment, staring up into the endless expanse of light. This was it, the point of no return. Taking a deep breath, I stepped inside. The first step inside the tower felt like crossing into another reality. The air hummed with energy, a low, resonant vibration that thrummed in my bones. The walls around me shimmered, their crystalline surfaces alive with shifting patterns of light. Every step I took echoed endlessly, the sound swallowed by the vastness of the tower's interior. The spiraling staircase stretched upward, disappearing into a distant glow. I couldn't tell if I was climbing toward salvation or oblivion, but the crystalline device in my hand pulsed with renewed urgency. It was as if it could sense the importance of this place, as if it were alive. The ascent wasn't easy. Barely 100 steps in, the tower began to test me. Figures emerged from the walls, humanoid shapes composed of light and shadow. They were like the being I'd met in the corridor, but these were less friendly. Their forms flickered with hostility, their movements sharp and erratic. "You carry the key," one of them hissed, its voice grating. "But are you worthy?" I raised the crystalline device instinctively, its glow intensifying. The figures recoiled slightly, but they didn't retreat. Instead, they surrounded me, their forms solidifying into something more menacing. Each carried a weapon, a staff of light that pulsed with destructive energy. The first one lunged, its staff aimed at my chest. I dodged, barely avoiding the strike, and swung my utility knife. The blade passed harmlessly through its body, as if slicing air. "Great," I muttered. "Can't fight light with steel?" The device in my hand pulsed again, and I felt a surge of heat run through me. Without thinking, I thrust it forward. A beam of light shot out, striking the figure square in the chest. It let out a shriek, dissolving into a shower of sparks. The others hesitated, their forms flickering uncertainly. Taking the chance, I sprinted up the stairs, the device glowing brighter with each step. Behind me, the remaining figures gave chase, their howls echoing through the tower. I reached the next landing breathless and battered, but the light forms didn't follow. Instead, I was met with a new challenge, a vast chamber filled with floating platforms, each spinning slowly in midair. A beam of energy connected the platforms, but it was unstable, flickering in and out of existence. The crystalline device pulsed, projecting a holographic map of the chamber. The path was clear, but it required precise timing. One wrong step, and I'd plummet into the abyss below. "Great. Just great," I muttered, wiping sweat from my brow. The first jump was the hardest. My legs felt like lead, and my breath caught in my throat as I launched myself onto the first platform. It wobbled under my weight but held steady. The next platform was further away, its beam barely visible. I leapt again, my foot landing on the edge. For a heart-stopping moment, I teetered, arms flailing for balance, before pulling myself up. This pattern continued, each jump more perilous than the last. The holographic map guided me, but the instability of the beams made every step a gamble. Halfway through the chamber, the whispers returned. "Turn back." I froze, my breath hitching. The voice was different this time, deeper, more insistent. It wasn't just in my head, it seemed to reverberate through the tower itself. "No," I said aloud, gritting my teeth. "I've come too far." Summoning every ounce of determination, I made the final leap, landing on solid ground as the last platform dissolved behind me. The whispers faded, replaced by a low, resonant hum that seemed to applaud my progress. The next level wasn't a challenge of physical endurance, but one of the mind. The moment I stepped into the chamber, the walls came alive with images, memories from my life. I saw myself as a boy, staring up at the stars from the fields of Montana. My father's voice echoed, teaching me the constellations, instilling in me a sense of wonder. I saw the academy, my first flight, the rush of breaking through Earth's atmosphere for the first time. Then the memories grew darker. I saw the battles, the comrades I'd lost, the decisions I'd made, the weight of command that had worn me down over the years. "Why do you fight?" a voice asked, soft yet piercing. "To survive," I answered automatically. The voice laughed, a sound that was neither cruel nor kind. "Survival is the base instinct of all life. What makes you different?" The question hung in the air, and I found myself at a loss. Why did I fight? Was it just survival, or something more? Was it the curiosity that had driven me to explore the stars? Or was it the hope that there was something greater out there, something worth fighting for? The walls shifted, the images blurring into a single, unified vision, the monolith, standing tall against the frozen wasteland of Zeta 73. "You fight to restore," the voice said, answering its own question. The final staircase was the longest. My legs burned, my breaths came in ragged gasps, but the crystalline device urged me onward. The light at the top grew brighter with each step, until it was almost blinding. When I reached the summit, I found myself in a circular chamber. At its center was a massive crystal, pulsing with energy. The patterns on its surface matched those of the monolith and the device in my hand. The light figure appeared again, its form more stable than before. "This is the core," it said. "The heart of the seal. You must restore it." "How?" I asked, stepping toward the crystal. The figure gestured to the device in my hand. "It holds the imprint of your journey. Place it within the core, and the seal will be complete." I hesitated, staring at the device. It had been my guide, my lifeline, through this entire ordeal. Parting with it felt like giving up a piece of myself. But there was no other choice. With a deep breath, I placed the crystalline device into the core. The room exploded with light, and I felt a surge of energy rush through me. The patterns on the crystal shifted, stabilizing into a steady, rhythmic pulse. The seal was restored. The light from the core enveloped me, a blinding brilliance that seemed to pierce through every fiber of my being. I felt weightless, as if I were dissolving into the energy itself, merging with the tower and the seal I had restored. Then, just as quickly as it began, the light receded, and I found myself standing in a void. The tower was gone. The crystalline device was gone. Even the faint hum of energy that had accompanied me since stepping through the portal was silent. For a moment, I wondered if this was it, if I had been reduced to nothing more than a fragment of light, floating aimlessly through time and space. But then I saw it, a faint shimmer in the distance, a doorway flickering in and out of existence. The doorway pulsed with the same energy as the monolith, its surface rippling like a liquid mirror. It wasn't stable, its edges flickering and distorting, but it was my only way out. I took a tentative step forward, the void beneath my feet somehow holding firm. With each step, the portal grew brighter, its rhythm matching the steady pulse of my heartbeat. As I approached, fragments of sound and vision began to bleed through, faint echoes of the world I'd left behind. The wind of Zeta 73. The crash of the stalwart eagle. The whispers. And then, with a final surge of light, I stepped through. The cold hit me like a hammer. After the strange warmth of the tower, the frigid air of Zeta 73 was a brutal reminder of reality. I stumbled forward, my boots sinking into the snow. I was back near the southern canyons, close to where the monolith had stood. But the landscape had changed. The jagged ice spires that once dominated the horizon were gone, replaced by smooth, rolling plains of snow. The air was quieter, the whispers absent for the first time since my arrival. In the distance, I saw the wreckage of the stalwart eagle. Its charred hull was a stark contrast against the white expanse, a reminder of the ordeal that had brought me here. But something else caught my attention, a faint glow near the horizon, pulsating gently like the heartbeat of the planet. I trudged through the snow toward the light, my limbs heavy with exhaustion. As I approached, I realized it wasn't a monolith or a portal. It was the crystalline device, embedded in the snow, its surface etched with new patterns. When I picked it up, the device activated, projecting a holographic message into the air. The figure of light appeared again, its form flickering but resolute. "Captain Rogers," it said, its voice echoing in my mind. "The seal has been restored, but the rift remains. The energy that sustains this place will collapse in time, and the gateway to your reality will close forever." I tightened my grip on the device. "How long do I have?" "Moments," the figure replied. The ground beneath me trembled, faint at first but growing stronger. The air seemed to vibrate with the same energy I had felt in the portal corridor, the gravitational anomaly intensifying. "What about this world?" I asked. "What happens to Zeta 73? The figure's light dimmed. "This place has fulfilled its purpose. It will return to the void, as all things must." There was a sadness in its voice, a weight that mirrored my own. Without another word, the hologram faded, and the device fell silent. The glow in the distance wasn't just the crystalline device, it was the wormhole, reactivating for one final moment. Its edges were unstable, rippling with chaotic energy, but it was open. I didn't hesitate. My survival instincts overpowered everything else as I sprinted toward the wormhole, the snow crunching beneath my boots. Behind me, the ground began to fracture, great fissures spreading across the plains as the planet itself started to unravel. The wormhole grew brighter, its pull increasing with every step. I leapt forward, diving into its center just as the ground beneath me gave way. The journey through the wormhole was different this time. The chaos and disorientation were still there, but so was a sense of purpose, a direction. The crystalline device pulsed faintly in my hand, guiding me through the turbulent currents of space-time. I caught glimpses of stars, galaxies, and fragments of alien worlds flashing past me. Time itself seemed to stretch and compress, the seconds feeling both eternal and instantaneous. And then, with a final burst of light, I emerged. I found myself on a derelict space station, its walls rusted and covered in vines that had no business growing in zero gravity. My suit's instruments beeped faintly, struggling to recalibrate. The station orbited a binary star system, its twin suns casting long shadows across the interior. I staggered to my feet, the crystalline device still clutched in my hand. A holographic interface flickered to life on the wall, its symbols ancient but decipherable. I scanned through the data, piecing together fragments of information. The station was a research outpost, abandoned thousands of years ago. Thousands of years. I sank to the floor, the weight of the realization crashing over me. The wormhole hadn't just carried me across space, it had carried me through time. As I explored the station, I began to piece together the fragments of this new world. Humanity had moved on, spreading to the stars in ways I could barely comprehend. The technology was unrecognizable, the maps displaying constellations that didn't match my charts. I was a relic of a forgotten era, a man out of time. But I was alive. And as I gazed out at the twin suns, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The crystalline device pulsed faintly in my hand, its light a reminder of the journey I had taken, the battles I had fought, and the mysteries that still awaited me. "Captain Rogers," I said aloud, my voice steady. "Mission complete. For now." The derelict station was a monument to the passage of time. I wandered its corridors, each step echoing through the silence. The faint hum of failing systems was the only sound, a reminder that even the most advanced technology eventually succumbs to entropy. The crystalline device pulsed softly in my hand, its light casting eerie patterns on the rusted walls. It had guided me through the portal and the tower, and now it seemed to be pointing me toward something new. But what? And why? As I explored the station, I stumbled upon fragments of its history. A series of holographic logs flickered to life as I passed, their projections hazy and unstable. A woman's voice, calm yet tinged with desperation, spoke. "Research Station Novalis. Year 7935 of the stellar expansion. Rift anomalies have increased exponentially. We are." The recording cut out, the image dissolving into static. The next log was no better. "Power reserves are critical. The rift's pull is." The phrase repeated over and over before the projection faded entirely. The rift? That word again. My heart sank as the implications hit me. The anomaly I had encountered on Zeta 73 wasn't unique. It was part of something larger, something that had persisted across millennia. The station's power core was failing. The dim lighting flickered, and the air grew colder with each passing hour. If I didn't act soon, my newfound refuge would become my tomb. I focused on the most immediate challenge, finding a way to escape. The station's hangar bay, located at its far end, was my best bet. If any of the vessels there were even partially functional, I could retrofit them with the station's remaining power reserves and chart a course toward civilization, or whatever was left of it. The crystalline device pulsed more insistently as I made my way toward the hangar. It wasn't just a tool, it was almost alive, guiding me with a strange intelligence that I couldn't fully understand. When I finally reached the hangar, I was greeted by a scene of desolation. Rows of ships, most of them ancient and corroded, lay dormant under a thin layer of frost. Some were skeletal remains, stripped of useful components long ago, while others appeared to have been abandoned in haste. One ship stood out. It was smaller than the others, its design sleek and unfamiliar. The hull was made of a material that shimmered faintly under the hangar lights, its surface unmarked by the decay that plagued its neighbors. As I approached, the crystalline device flared brightly. The ship responded in kind, its systems powering on with a soft hum. A voice echoed from its console, smooth and mechanical. "Vessel Aegis activated. Awaiting input." I climbed into the cockpit, marveling at the advanced technology. The interface was unlike anything I'd encountered, but the crystalline device seemed to bridge the gap. When I placed it into a slot on the console, the ship's systems fully activated, and the displays translated into a language I could understand. The Aegis was more than just a ship, it was a lifeline. Its scanners detected nearby star systems, its engines were fully operational, and its hull was equipped with shielding far beyond anything I'd seen in my own time. But it wasn't just the ship's capabilities that intrigued me. The navigation logs revealed a single destination marked with priority, the Nexus Rift. The name sent a chill through me. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As the Aegis powered up, the station's failing systems finally gave out. The lights flickered one last time before plunging the hangar into darkness. I strapped into the pilot seat and initiated the launch sequence. The ship lifted smoothly from the hangar floor, its engines humming with a steady power that filled me with confidence. As I guided it out into the void, the station shrank behind me, a relic of a past I could never return to. The crystalline device pulsed faintly, its patterns shifting to display coordinates for the Nexus Rift. I set a course and activated the autopilot, leaning back in the seat as the stars stretched into streaks of light around me. For the first time in what felt like ages, I allowed myself a moment of peace. The mysteries of the Rift, the monolith, and the whispers of Zeta 73 were behind me, but I knew they were only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and its secrets were endless. And as long as I had breath in my lungs, I would uncover them all. "Captain Rogers," I said aloud, a faint smile crossing my lips. "Still here. Still fighting." The stars rushed past as the Aegis hummed steadily, its navigation systems locked onto the mysterious destination, the Nexus Rift. The crystalline device remained seated in the console, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, as if it were alive, or aware of the journey ahead. The name haunted me. Nexus Rift. A term loaded with implications, none of them comforting. The remnants of Station Novalis had suggested that this rift was tied to the anomalies plaguing the galaxy. Zeta 73 was just one thread in a tapestry woven across time and space, and now I was hurtling toward its center. The cockpit was eerily silent, save for the soft hum of the engines. I leaned back in the pilot's chair, staring out at the streaking stars. My mind wandered to the tower, to the whispers, to the ancient being of light that had guided me. Was I a savior in this story? Or just another pawn? The Aegis's alarm broke my thoughts. Proximity alert, the ship's AI intoned. Anomaly detected. I bolted upright, scanning the displays. Ahead, the smooth expanse of hyperspace began to distort, ripples spreading like waves on a pond. The stars beyond flickered, and the crystalline device pulsed erratically, as if reacting to the disturbance. Disengaging autopilot, I said, gripping the controls. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and the void beyond the viewport was anything but empty. Ahead lay the Nexus Rift, a swirling maelstrom of light and shadow that stretched across the fabric of space. Tendrils of energy spiraled outward, their colors shifting from brilliant white to deep, menacing red. The Aegis trembled as the rift's gravitational pull reached out to it. I adjusted the thrusters, keeping the ship steady as I scanned the anomaly. Energy signatures consistent with interdimensional rift phenomena, the AI reported. Unstable. Extreme caution advised. No kidding, I muttered, my hands tightening on the controls. As I guided the Aegis closer, the crystalline device emitted a high-pitched tone. Its patterns shifted rapidly, displaying a series of symbols I couldn't decipher. But I didn't need to. The device was reacting to the rift, and whatever was on the other side was calling to it. Identify any life signs, I commanded. The scanner pinged. Multiple faint signals detected. Origin, unknown. I leaned forward, studying the display. The signals were scattered throughout the rift, each one flickering like a dying ember. Were they survivors? Beings trapped within the anomaly? Or something else entirely? The Aegis's AI interrupted my thoughts, entering the outer boundary of the Nexus Rift. Recommend immediate action. I hesitated, staring into the swirling chaos. The crystalline device pulsed again, brighter this time, its tone rising in urgency. It was now or never. Let's see what's on the other side, I said, engaging the rift drive. The ship lurched as it plunged into the Nexus Rift. The turbulence was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Lights flashed across the viewport, and the controls vibrated violently under my hands. It was as if the ship were being torn apart, atom by atom, and reassembled in real time. I gritted my teeth, fighting to keep the Aegis stable. The crystalline device emitted a piercing sound, its patterns shifting wildly. Then, just as I thought the ship might disintegrate, the turbulence stopped. I opened my eyes to find myself in a place that defied description. The space around the ship wasn't empty, it was alive. The rift had given way to a vast expanse filled with floating islands of energy, each one pulsating with its own rhythm. Massive structures, some resembling towers and others like sprawling cities, drifted in the void, their surfaces glowing faintly. Streams of light arced between the islands, forming an intricate web of connections. It was beautiful, but also deeply unsettling. This wasn't just a rift, it was a realm, a dimension unto itself. The Aegis's sensors struggled to make sense of it. Unknown environment. Gravitational anomalies present. Time dilation probable. The crystalline device pulsed more rapidly, directing my attention to one of the larger structures. It resembled a colossal sphere, its surface covered in glowing patterns that mirrored those of the device. That's where we're headed, I said, steering the ship toward the sphere. As I approached, the surface of the sphere shifted, forming a massive opening. The Aegis passed through with ease, entering a vast interior chamber filled with machinery that seemed both ancient and impossibly advanced. The crystalline device flared brightly, and a familiar figure materialized before me, the being of light. Captain Rogers, it said, its voice resonating through the cockpit. You have come to the heart of the Nexus? I don't exactly have a choice, do I? I replied, trying to mask my unease. What is this place? This is the origin matrix, the being explained. The Nexus Rift is not a tear, but a convergence, a point where dimensions overlap. It is both a bridge and a battleground. Battleground. The being's light dimmed slightly. Long ago, forces beyond comprehension sought to control the Nexus. Their war destabilized countless worlds, including yours. The monoliths were created to contain the Rift's power, but their strength has waned. I thought of Zeta 73, of the frozen wasteland and the whispers of the past. So, what am I supposed to do? You must restore the balance, the being said, its form growing brighter. The Nexus must be stabilized, or its collapse will consume all connected dimensions, including yours. The crystalline device detached from the console, floating into the air before merging with a central pedestal in the chamber. The machinery around me roared to life, and the sphere's interior filled with streams of light that formed a complex, shifting pattern. "You carry the last key," the being said. "But the process will not be easy. The Nexus will resist, and the echoes of those who sought its power will try to stop you." "Of course they will," I muttered. "It's never easy." The being extended a hand, its light enveloping me. "You have faced the void and survived, Captain Rogers. Now, face the Nexus. Restore the balance, and your path home will be clear." Before I could respond, the light intensified, and the chamber around me dissolved into a storm of energy. The stars rushed past as the Aegis hummed steadily, its navigation systems locked onto the mysterious destination, the Nexus Rift. The crystalline device remained seated in the console, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, as if it were alive, or aware of the journey ahead. The name haunted me. Nexus Rift. A term loaded with implications, none of them comforting. The remnants of Station Novalis had suggested that this rift was tied to the anomalies plaguing the galaxy. Zeta 73 was just one thread in a tapestry woven across time and space, and now I was hurtling toward its center. The cockpit was eerily silent, save for the soft hum of the engines. I leaned back in the pilot's chair, staring out at the streaking stars. My mind wandered to the tower, to the whispers, to the ancient being of light that had guided me. Was I a savior in this story? Or just another pawn? The Aegis's alarm broke my thoughts. Proximity alert, the ship's AI intoned. Anomaly detected. I bolted upright, scanning the displays. Ahead, the smooth expanse of hyperspace began to distort, ripples spreading like waves on a pond. The stars beyond flickered, and the crystalline device pulsed erratically, as if reacting to the disturbance. "Disengaging autopilot," I said, gripping the controls. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and the void beyond the viewport was anything but empty. Ahead lay the Nexus Rift, a swirling maelstrom of light and shadow that stretched across the fabric of space. Tendrils of energy spiraled outward, their colors shifting from brilliant white to deep, menacing red. The Aegis trembled as the rift's gravitational pull reached out to it. I adjusted the thrusters, keeping the ship steady as I scanned the anomaly. Energy signatures consistent with interdimensional rift phenomena, the AI reported. Unstable. Extreme caution advised. "No kidding," I muttered, my hands tightening on the controls. As I guided the Aegis closer, the crystalline device emitted a high-pitched tone. Its patterns shifted rapidly, displaying a series of symbols I couldn't decipher. But I didn't need to. The device was reacting to the rift, and whatever was on the other side was calling to it. "Identify any life signs," I commanded. The scanner pinged. Multiple faint signals detected. Origin, unknown. I leaned forward, studying the display. The signals were scattered throughout the rift, each one flickering like a dying ember. Were they survivors? Beings trapped within the anomaly? Or something else entirely? The Aegis's AI interrupted my thoughts, entering the outer boundary of the Nexus Rift. "Recommend immediate action." I hesitated, staring into the swirling chaos. The crystalline device pulsed again, brighter this time, its tone rising in urgency. It was now or never. "Let's see what's on the other side," I said, engaging the rift drive. The ship lurched as it plunged into the Nexus Rift. The turbulence was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Lights flashed across the viewport, and the controls vibrated violently under my hands. It was as if the ship were being torn apart, atom by atom, and reassembled in real time. I gritted my teeth, fighting to keep the Aegis stable. The crystalline device emitted a piercing sound, its patterns shifting wildly. Then, just as I thought the ship might disintegrate, the turbulence stopped. I opened my eyes to find myself in a place that defied description. The space around the ship wasn't empty, it was alive. The rift had given way to a vast expanse filled with floating islands of energy, each one pulsating with its own rhythm. Massive structures, some resembling towers and others like sprawling cities, drifted in the void, their surfaces glowing faintly. Streams of light arced between the islands, forming an intricate web of connections. It was beautiful, but also deeply unsettling. This wasn't just a rift, it was a realm, a dimension unto itself. The Aegis's sensors struggled to make sense of it. Unknown environment. Gravitational anomalies present. Time dilation probable. The crystalline device pulsed more rapidly, directing my attention to one of the larger structures. It resembled a colossal sphere, its surface covered in glowing patterns that mirrored those of the device. "That's where we're headed," I said, steering the ship toward the sphere. As I approached, the surface of the sphere shifted, forming a massive opening. The Aegis passed through with ease, entering a vast interior chamber filled with machinery that seemed both ancient and impossibly advanced. The crystalline device flared brightly, and a familiar figure materialized before me, the being of light. "Captain Rogers," it said, its voice resonating through the cockpit. "You have come to the heart of the Nexus? I don't exactly have a choice, do I?" I replied, trying to mask my unease. What is this place? This is the origin matrix, the being explained. The Nexus Rift is not a tear, but a convergence, a point where dimensions overlap. It is both a bridge and a battleground. Battleground. The being's light dimmed slightly. Long ago, forces beyond comprehension sought to control the Nexus. Their war destabilized countless worlds, including yours. The monoliths were created to contain the Rift's power, but their strength has waned. I thought of Zeta 73, of the frozen wasteland and the whispers of the past. So, what am I supposed to do? You must restore the balance, the being said, its form growing brighter. The Nexus must be stabilized, or its collapse will consume all connected dimensions, including yours. The crystalline device detached from the console, floating into the air before merging with a central pedestal in the chamber. The machinery around me roared to life, and the sphere's interior filled with streams of light that formed a complex, shifting pattern. You carry the last key, the being said. But the process will not be easy. The Nexus will resist, and the echoes of those who sought its power will try to stop you. Of course they will, I muttered. It's never easy. The being extended a hand, its light enveloping me. You have faced the void and survived, Captain Rogers. Now, face the Nexus. Restore the balance, and your path home will be clear. Before I could respond, the light intensified, and the chamber around me dissolved into a storm of energy. The Aegis drifted through the void, its systems humming softly as if in quiet reflection of the events that had just unfolded. I sat in the cockpit, staring out at the endless stars. The crystalline device rested on the console, its pattern subdued but steady, like the beating of a heart at rest. The Nexus Rift was gone, but the weight of what I had seen and done lingered. The echoes, the guardians, the being of light, all of it felt like a dream teetering on the edge of memory. Yet the scars on my suit and the ache in my body were proof enough that it had been real. The crystalline device flared briefly, its light illuminating the cockpit. Symbols appeared on the console screen, forming a new map of the galaxy. It wasn't like any chart I had seen before. This one showed threads of energy connecting different points in space, an intricate web that spanned countless star systems. The device emitted a single tone, calm and resonant. A message appeared on the screen. The Nexus is stable. The threads are mended. Follow the light. I traced the map with my finger, the lines leading to a single point far from my current position. The destination was uncharted, a blank spot on humanity's star maps. Yet, the crystalline device seemed certain. This was where I needed to go. But not yet. The Aegis's sensors picked up a nearby colony, one of the outermost human settlements. Its faint signal carried the echoes of human life, voices, activity, survival. After so long in isolation, the thought of seeing another person, hearing another voice, was almost overwhelming. I set a course and engaged the ship's engines. The journey was brief, but it felt like an eternity. When the colony came into view, a cluster of domes and spires clinging to a barren moon, I couldn't suppress the lump in my throat. I was home, in a way. The docking process was seamless, the Aegis's systems syncing effortlessly with the colony's port. As I stepped out onto the landing platform, the crisp, processed air filled my lungs. A small group of colonists approached, their faces a mix of curiosity and caution. One of them, a woman in a weathered uniform, stepped forward. "Who are you?" she asked, her tone wary. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Captain Rogers. I've been away for a long time." The next few days were a blur of questions, explanations, and reunions. The colony's database confirmed what I had already known. 10,000 years had passed since my departure from Earth. Humanity had changed, spreading across the stars and evolving in ways I couldn't have imagined. Yet, some things remained the same. The colonists were captivated by my story, their eyes wide as I recounted the frozen wasteland of Zeta 73, the tower, the Nexus, and the echoes. For them, it was a legend come to life, a tale of survival, courage, and the mysteries of the cosmos. But for me, it was more than a story. It was a reminder of the cost of curiosity, the weight of responsibility, and the endless pull of the stars. Before I left the colony, I sat alone in the Aegis, staring at the crystalline device. Its light was steady, its patterns calm. It had been my guide, my shield, and my key. Now, it was my compass, pointing me toward new horizons. I activated the ship's recorder and began a final log. Mission log, Captain Rogers. Mission number 27, complete. The Nexus is stable, the threads of the rift mended. Humanity is safe, for now. I paused, glancing at the map on the screen. But there's more out there. The stars are calling, and I can't ignore them. If anyone finds this log, know that I did my duty. And know that I'll keep doing it, as long as there's breath in my lungs and a galaxy to explore. I ended the recording, my hand lingering over the console. The Aegis's engines hummed softly, ready to carry me to the next chapter of my journey. The Aegis lifted off, leaving the colony behind. The map on the console glowed faintly, its threads of light leading me toward the uncharted point on the edge of the galaxy. I didn't know what I would find there, but that was the point, wasn't it? The unknown had always been my destination. As the ship entered hyperspace, I leaned back in the pilot's chair, a faint smile crossing my lips. "Captain Rogers," I said aloud, my voice steady. "Mission number 28, commencing." And with that, I disappeared into the stars. Captain Rogers' journey is far from over, but for now, his tale comes to rest. The frozen wastes of Zeta 73, the mysteries of the Nexus, and the threads of light connecting the galaxy have all become part of a story that will endure for generations. Would you like to start crafting a new mission, or explore the aftermath of this adventure further?